All right, everyone. You know, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I know people are going to be filtering in as we progress. I am excited. Today is the day we're going to be kicking off the beta for the CIMIS Web API. First of all, I do want to acknowledge a few people who will be joining us today. Some aren't on the line quite yet, but I'm sure they'll be joining us. Bekala Temes-Jen also is going to be joining us. They are the program managers for CIMIS, and I will be deferring to them relating to data issue or data questions that you might have. Also, we have Quinn Hart on the line, and Quinn is a gentleman who's been working with UC Davis to develop the spatial CIMIS system, and I'll be deferring to him regarding the spatial program during the question and answer period. Also, we're going to be having Fiona Sanchez, the Irvine Ranch Water District Director, who is the lead agency for the initial ET-XML project that many of you are using today. And of course, we have manufacturers dialing in from various companies looking to see what data they're going to be able to glean from this new CIMIS Web API. I'm Carlos Ortega. I'm with Enterprise Information Systems. I am the Chief Developer and Architect of the CIMIS Web application and also the ET-XML application, and now the CIMIS Web API application. So let's dive right in. First of all, I did want to cover the data-related topics. We have, like I said, Quinn on the line and Bekala, and they're going to be here for the top of the meeting, and I wanted to make sure that we have their expertise available for your questions. So let's begin. What are the CIMIS data providers? There are essentially two: the CIMIS Weather Station Network and the Spatial CIMIS System. Both of these providers, as the name data provider would indicate, provide data, but they do differ in the sense that, you know, each provider provides a subset of data. Let me give you an example. The weather stations, that gives you very comprehensive data, and you'll notice when we get into the demo that from a weather station standpoint, you're able to gather quite a bit of information. Now, from the spatial CIMIS system, which is based on the work that has been done by Quinn and the folks at UC Davis. You know, that's taking satellite data, allowing us to get information at a 2-kilometer resolution, and specifically ETO and solar radiation is what's being published currently through the CIMIS Web API. So on one hand, you have the CIMIS Weather Station Network, which does have broad coverage, but would not be considered comprehensive in the sense that it has full statewide coverage. And it gives you really a plethora of information versus the spatial CIMIS system, which does give you complete statewide coverage at a 2-kilometer resolution, as I mentioned, but it doesn't give you every sensor variation that you may be interested in. So it's really the combination of both of these providers that source the data for the CIMIS Web API. Now, if you look here, we're going to take a look now at the CIMIS Weather Station Network. Each of those points on the map that you see in front of you, those are weather stations. Those are stations, or at least those are the locations of the weather stations within this network. And currently there are more than 140 active weather stations throughout the state. So you have a pretty broad, like I said, coverage, and but again, not comprehensive. And for these weather stations, you're able to make requests. You can either request information for a specific weather station, and by the way, the number there that's associated with each of those points on the map, that's the weather station number. you're able to obtain data by the station number, or you're able to obtain information by zip code. Each station has one or more zip codes associated with it. So, for instance, if you were interested in looking at, 90014, it's possible to obtain information for that zip code and obtain station information for that zip code, rather, because there would be a station that is associated with that zip code. Now let's talk a little bit about the spatial CIMIS system. Okay, again, this information is gathered through GOES satellite that orbits, and essentially we're able to obtain this 2-kilometer resolution data. And again, I just want to make it very clear, for this data provider, CIMIS Web API will report ETO and solar radiation only. You do have a very broad coverage at a fairly fine granularity at a 2-kilometer resolution. And I'm going to show you guys also how we're able to obtain average zip code data. So again, we're going to cover that in just a bit. Now, you're able to query by coordinate. So if you have a decimal-based coordinate, you're able to plug that into the CIMIS Web API, and we're going to be able to provide you a value for that coordinate, as long as, of course, that zip code is within the confines of California. You're also able to enter an address. We will geocode that address for you, and essentially that will equate to some coordinate, and we'll provide you that data for that address. So let's take a look at the different data providers and what information they provide. Now you'll notice here, on the left-hand side is the CIMIS Weather Station Network. And for this data provider, you're able to obtain daily data by station, hourly data by station, and hourly data by zip code. And in the center, you'll notice that you're able to also obtain daily data by zip code. So the daily data by zip code, that's shared between the weather station network and the spatial CIMIS system. Now, throughout the presentation, I'm going to be referring to both of these providers by their shorter name, WSN for the weather station network, and SCS for the spatial CIMIS system. Okay, so continuing on here, you see that the spatial CIMIS system provides only daily data. That's very important. Only daily data, and it provides it either by coordinate or by street address, and again, by daily data by zip code. So let's take a look at a map here. It just so happens I picked Beverly Hills, 90210, where we all have our summer home. And what we're looking at here is a 1-kilometer grid overlaid on that map. And so essentially, we're having data at a 2-kilometer resolution. So for instance, if we wanted, basically the center of this zip code, 90210, we would land on this pixel here, this 2-kilometer square. So we certainly do have data for that. You pull up that particular coordinate, and we will get you that data. Quinn, are you on the line? Give you a chance to unmute, because I'm sure there's going to be a Q&A section coming up here.
I'm here, Carlos.
Right on. Okay, so, rather than me attempting to explain what you communicated with me so clearly yesterday, I thought maybe I'd yield the floor to you so you can discuss how the average zip code works, and I have this visual here for your benefit.
Okay. Well, it's actually not that complicated. What we do is, as Carlos said, there's only the spatial CIMIS data comes in at a 2-kilometer resolution, and so basically what we do is we just do an average of the individual pixels that are over any given zip code. But since the zip codes can be relatively small compared to a 2 kilometer by 2 kilometer squared pixel, we add an additional little component there where what we actually do is divide the state into 500 by 500 meter pixels. And then we find out which one of those, all of those pixels are inside a particular zip code. And then those are all summed up to create the average. So what Carlos is showing here is the 500 meter grid overlaid on top of that 902 zip code. And then all of those individual components will be added up and summed to create the average. Now, basically, for the 500 by 500 square pixel corresponds to about 16 of those little pixels per 2 kilometer, for the 2 kilometer grid that the big pixels are. And that value is constant across that. But what it does allow you to do is add contributions down to about 1/16 of a pixel in order to get those averages.
Great, Quinn. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So let's move on, because I noticed here that we're starting to run short on time. I'm going to open up to everyone else. If you have questions regarding the data, we have Bekele on the line, we have Quinn on the line, and if I'm able to, I will also answer.
I just had a quick question on the SCS data source. You said the data was daily data. Is it the sum of hourly data, or is it what ET equation is it using to go and calculate the daily data?
Quinn, do you want to field that?
Yeah, we do actually use the daily calculation for that. The radiation component of that is actually calculated on an hourly basis and summed up. Basically, the way that the SCS works, just as a brief overview, is that the net radiation is the one it interpolates about the least well of any of the parameters that are read at the CIMIS station. So what we do is just monitor the cloud cover over the day with the GOES weather satellite, and then we add that cloud cover into a model for the net radiation, and that way we get a more highly resolved input net radiation for our ETO calculation. But that's done using the daily calculation, and the RS is also the daily, but the RS is the sum of the hourly calculation.
Thank you.
Any other data questions? All right, let's move on then. So what is the CIMIS Web API? Okay, the CIMIS Web API offers CIMIS data to the public free of charge, and it's via this application programming interface, which is just simply means we're providing the data through a well-defined interface. Replacement for, and it's, by the way, a replacement for the current ET-XML system. It's actually an extension and a replacement of that system. So what are the plans? DWR will continue to support the current ET-XML product in production for 1 year after the GA release of the CIMIS Web API, which we anticipate to occur very close to the end of the year, if not Q1. Okay, so essentially, if you're on the existing ET-XML product, which I know most of you are, this is a really good time to start planning to move to the CIMIS Web API. The CIMIS Web API is a full production product, fully supported by DWR, essentially on their enterprise platform. So this is a very good platform from which to develop product, from which to essentially write your applications for, because again, it's fully supported. Now, regarding the ET-XML product, it's going to be, it may continue to be online. I'm not saying that it won't. It certainly won't be supported after a period of 1 year. But how long it stays online, I'm not sure. So I just want to caution those of you who have, built anything on top of it. Again, this is a great time to move. to the new CIMIS Web API. So what's new? What are we getting here? You know, the old deployment was primarily SOAP-based, and I realized a lot of people were using the REST interface, but it wasn't a really very good REST interface because, you know, it didn't really embrace REST as a protocol. The new CIMIS Web API absolutely does embrace REST as a protocol. We support not only XML, but JSON now. So you have really your choice and pick regarding what content format you intend to use for your application. The old system used HTTPS, but really there's no reason to have HTTPS because we're not really dealing with secure data. There are no, you know, content-sensitive items here. We don't even have a username and password crossing the line at this point, which leads me to bullet 4, which is no authentication. There is no authentication for the new services. You will find that you do need an application key, so only registered users will be able to use the data service. However, there is no need for a user ID and password in this system. Now, station IDs and zip code metadata, that information is now available to you. So really, it should have been included in the initial offering, but because one thing that you do need is you need to know what stations are available, what stations are active, and if you're doing searches by zip code, like so many of us are nowadays, you need to know what zip codes are supported by the CIMIS system. Virtually all of them are. You know, and Quinn, correct me if I'm wrong here, we're using 2010 census data for zip codes. I believe, is that correct? I just want to make sure I'm getting that right.
Actually, that's not correct now, but one of the components of moving this to the production system is that that'll be redone at the 2010 zip codes.
Got it. So essentially, the services I mentioned, the idea there is you're able to read that information. You could use it basically at a service level. You could download it into your database. Whatever it is and however you want to work with that data, it's available now. We do have some updated zip code support. We do support more zip codes now than we did at the onset. And again, look to those zip code services to give you all the information you'll need about what zip codes are supported. We do have a new address feature. The address feature will essentially geocode whatever address you enter in and provide you a zip code. It gives you that added convenience. You don't have to go through the Google Maps API to obtain the coordinate. You could just go directly through the CIMIS Web API and basically shortcut that process. So, like I said, we have SOAP and REST protocols. Okay, SOAP and REST. So what are we getting here? SOAP is essentially more difficult to implement simply because there are more requirements if you intend to use SOAP. From virtually everyone I spoke to, they seem to be leaning towards the REST protocol simply because it's easier to implement. If you do intend to do SOAP, there is a WSDL out there that you can tap into. It does require WS security, and you need to do some custom binding work. So if you're using WCF rather, I do have a particular DLL you will need that has custom bindings in it that you could use to establish the bindings for your for that service. Now, if you're using REST, you don't have to deal with any of that. You can go directly to the data, assuming, of course, you have your application key, which is, again, issued to every registered user of the system. And I'll show you guys how to register, really simple, to obtain access. Now, REST. We are using what's called content negotiation. Our web service essentially interrogates the accept header, sees if you want JSON or XML. JSON is the default if you're using REST. And like I said, we're completely embracing the HTTP protocol, so you will see the appropriate HTTP codes, for each request that you issue. And we're going to see some examples of these later, guys. So bear with me. Like I mentioned, JSON's the default. These are some of the benefits of JSON and XML. I'm going to kind of flip through these. I think those are pretty evident. We talked about content negotiation, interrogating the accept header, where the REST-based implementation for those geeks in the room that care to know, we're using MVC4 ASP.NET Web API. This is kind of the latest and greatest from Microsoft regarding how to do REST-based services. All right, like I mentioned, no authentication. You will need that application key. So here are the services, right? So we have the basic data service, and this gives you all the CIMIS data. We had 7 services before. This one service replaces them all. Okay, let's see here. This service URI will give you the stations, and these are the station zip codes, and here are the spatial zip codes. Again, the data service replaces all of these. You probably are used to these. The one service will replace them all. I'll show you exactly how that works. All right, let's transition directly into the demo. So here's the website, by the way. Go ahead and, if you guys need to know how to get there, it's really simple. HTTP et.water.ca.gov. You'll land right here. Okay, and here, essentially you're going to get all the information that you need regarding how to use the service. For the main CIMIS Web API page, and you'll see here that you just put this information, we will receive it and issue you an application key. Once you receive your application key, you're able to use the services. It's really that simple. Now, for the station services and for the zip code services, you don't need an application. For those services, go in. You can start that now if you wanted to, and take a look at those. However, for the data service, that you will need an application key for. Here is a page that kind of explains in detail, and I won't get into the nuts and bolts here of this page, but it really explains how to use the data service. Now, here's how we were able to get all of this into the data service. Notice that we have a target. Here's the application key parameter, by the way, where you enter in a global unique identifier that's issued to you at registration time. Okay, now these targets over here, they represent what information you want. You'll notice it says here, it answers the question, what station, what area rather, or station am I reporting on? So you'll notice here you can enter into that station numbers, zip codes, coordinates, addresses, and essentially the API is intelligent enough to understand that, oh, that's a station number, or this is a zip code. Now, one thing is very important. If you're creating a list of station numbers, it must only be a list of station numbers. You can't mix these up. So you can't have a list that has some station numbers and some zip codes and some coordinates. It's either a list of stations, list of zip codes, a list of coordinates, or a list of addresses. The other two required fields are the start and end date. Pretty simple. The rest are optional. Unit of measure, by default, it's English units. If you want metric, simply specify unit of measure and metric. The data items, by default, it's the more common data items. Of course, you're probably going to want to specify exactly which data items you want. You want ETO, you want precipitation, and so forth. This flag is very important. Prioritize SCS. So SCS, that's the spatial system, right? So if you prefer to receive spatial zip code data, you want to make sure that prioritize SCS is set to Y. Then you will get the spatial data. Because let's say it was set to N, and you enter a zip code. Well, both data providers provide zip code data. So if it's set to N, meaning you don't prioritize SCS data, and the zip code is available in the weather station network or the WSN system, you're going to get WSN data. So if you're looking for an average zip code, you're really going to want to prioritize SCS. So here's a list of data items that you're able to get. Now, you'll notice here which ones are supported by the data provider. WSN, you'll notice, supports everything. Really, it supports the daily, and here you have the hourly list of data items. So WSN supports everything, but you'll notice that for ASCE ETO, also known as Penman-Monteith or PM ETO, SCS supports ASCE ETO. It also supports solar radiation. Okay, so those two are covered by the SCS system. And again, this list, if you want to any of these data items in your result set, assuming, of course, the data provider that you're querying supports that data, you simply specify it as a parameter here for the data items parameter. And again, we're going to look at some examples where hopefully this will be a lot clearer. In fact, here's an example right here of a RESTful call. Essentially, you'll need to plug in your application key here. And this one is a station request. You'll notice here that I want stations 28 and 127 for this date range, and that's it. You could actually plug this into a browser, assuming you have an application key, and you will get data. Now here's the JSON response for that. You notice here we're getting the air temperature, max, min, and average data. And over here is the XML response. Actually, you'll notice here that I truncated some results. There should be more data here. It's just, it takes so much room on the page that I spared you having to scroll through all of that. The XML is a little more concise, so I actually show all the data here. But these are the default columns that we mentioned earlier. Remember, by default, if you don't specify a data item, and we didn't here, you get the default. So here we're getting the default set of data items for the date range we wanted. You'll notice that the unit of measure is English, as we specified. The data provider is station, or SCS. I'm sorry, WSN, forgive me. Let's see here, and again, we're looking at English units. Now, one kind of cool thing here, too, is, you can mix up your data items. Let's say I wanted some daily and hourly data. And by the way, if you do this, you're going to get WSN data. If you mix daily and hourly, because the SCS system does not support hourly data, you're only going to get WSN data if you're going to mix it, okay? And I think that's mentioned here in the documentation, but I thought I'd point that out. So here we're doing a query. We're targeting only station 5 in this instance. We're looking for, I guess, 1 day of data, and we're looking for daily and hourly data. So you'll notice here that you have the CIMIS provider, you have this is the daily record, and then you start seeing the hourly records. So you have 1 daily record, and then the 24 hourly records, and of course I truncate the data set here, but you'll get that way. If you request XML, you're able to do that here. Okay, I'm going to let you guys go ahead and read through this. In the interest of time, I'm going to actually want to run a few of these in the demo. Kind of a neat thing here is you can click on this online service tests link. And then if you enter your application key, it's going to generate a series of unit tests for each of those services. So, plug in my code, and you'll notice here it generates a bunch, and you can click on these links here, and it will run, it will essentially run these. So here you have a daily data by station number request, one by zip code, and you get the idea. Here's daily data by address, which is using the spatial system. If you're ever using address coordinates, it's always the SCS system. It's the only one that will deal with coordinates. So in this case, you'll notice where we have Grauman's Chinese Theater and Hollywood Boulevard, etc. Ooh, let me get Fiddler going here. Before I start these, I want to start a Fiddler. Now, for those of you who don't know, Fiddler kind of snoops on the line and sees what kind of traffic is being, going back and forth on the internet. So let's go ahead and let's run the first one here, which essentially is going to give us daily data by station number. And see, we have our data here. So if we open it up, essentially it's going to be JSON data. I'll open that text file, and here you are. And, it shows up minified, so, the spaces are not there. Everything's compressed together, so it's not very easily readable. But I believe I have this utility here that will allow me to print it in a way that is a little more user-friendly. And so now you can see the product of the query we just entered. Okay, so this is it in JSON format. Now, if you look at Fiddler, and you look at the query that we just executed, I'm going to go to the raw format here. Essentially, one moment, let me get rid of that. Okay. So this is the GET request that we performed. Okay. Didn't want that to happen. One second. Back to Fiddler. That's the GET request we performed, that line. And if we look at the raw data for that request, here's our JSON, okay? Now, what I want to do is I want to take this GET request and I want to execute it, but I want XML data instead. Okay, so you simply need to grab that data. Oh, not very good at that. Okay, so I'm going to grab that. Let me stick that in Notepad really quick and clean it up. Okay, so there's my request. I'm going to go to the Composer section where I can kind of create my own request here. And I'm going to set the accept header to application XML. And I'm going to execute that same query we just ran. And there we have our results back already. There it is. Double click, and you'll notice I'm going to be getting XML data now. Let's go to the raw information. I'm going to take that and I'm going to put it into this utility that will make it a little easier to read. And as you can see here, we get the same exact data. The data is the same, guys. The structure is the same. The names change a little bit because the JSON format doesn't use this hyphenated approach. In JSON, it's kind of tailored towards writing code directly against it through like some JavaScript. So we don't use this hyphen name nomenclature. But essentially the same data that you had there, you're going to get here. All right, so let's go back to our demo here. And again, we're running a little long on time, so I'm trying to fit as much in as I can and still leave enough time at the end to field your questions. So again, you can go through these guys, very simple. Let's do an address example here. So this is going to the SES system and grabbing all the data for that. And let's see here, there's our results, Notepad, and again, you're going to see the data in JSON format. I'll let you guys play with that. Pretty simple stuff here in terms of using the REST interface to achieve this. By the way, if you guys want to use SOAP, if anyone out there is interested in the SOAP protocol, I realize I'm not really covering that here. You can go to this section here and it will tell you all about what's required to do SOAP, okay? Also, there's a tab here called Usage. And what the Usage tab does is it allows you to obtain information about the queries you've been doing. So for instance, for this, for the application key I've been using, I've had a total of 37 reports for this month. So this is basically month-to-date information, and you could look at the queries that you did. Here are my hourly zip code queries and the queries that I did by station number, the date I requested it, the date range I wanted, and the unit of measure, et cetera. So for those of you who are kind of interested in kind of tracking your own usage, you're able to get that here as well. So I know that was a lot, guys, to cover, but I'm going to open it up at this point. Any questions?
What are you looking for from us?
Okay, that's a great question. We are looking for any feedback you might have regarding these services. So it is a beta product. You know, what we're looking for is just feedback. So what do you think of the services provide, the data that you're interested in, and also some feedback regarding, you know, what things would you like to see? Not that we're going to be coding that right away, but I like, all right. So yeah, and the way, by the way, feedback, very simple. Just contact me directly. You'll find my email here under support. Okay, and simply email me, or you can call me also. I can provide my my phone number out here as well. I'm here to support you guys in this. So, for instance, if you have questions, do not hesitate. By all means, please do call me and let me know. Having, you know, I'd come alongside and maybe help you out. I do have some sample code too. So, for instance, if you're using .NET, I have a set of POCO classes, that's plain old class objects, that you could deserialize, you know, the JSON data back into its object form. So that really does help cut down some development time if you're interested in that kind of thing. So I have a lot of goodies for you guys if you're interested in that. But again, what we're looking for is feedback. You know, the tighter the feedback loop is, the more communication we have, because that means we'll be able to get to production sooner, and that's really the goal here, is to get us into that production mode. I did want to clarify one thing about registration. Guys, when you go to register, you know, you're going to be filling out this form, and, you know, you're not going to get a unique ID right away or an application key right away. We're going to be issuing that to you. So we expect to have, you know, once you register, please do register today if you can. We're going to be getting those unique user IDs out to you probably early next week, maybe midweek next week. Need to get approval from the production change control board at DWR before I do that, but please don't hesitate to register, and we'll get you on that list.
And then what's your timing to have the feedback and to make it publicly available, or I guess make it non-beta?
Right. So the plan is this: we're looking to get feedback as soon as you guys get your keys and are able to, you know, use the services. You know, that would be the, you know, if you find anything at that point, please let me know. All the way to, I believe we're targeting December 17th as, you know, as the date where we make a decision. Do we need to extend the beta program, or is it stable enough to go live? I'm hopeful that, you know, at that point we can go live, because that means we will meet our internal objective of you know, closing out before year's end. However, you know, the most important thing is to make sure we have a quality product. We're not going to rush it. So please, any feedback you guys have would be great. And again, I'm available to you. You know, if you for questions. Again, I have a library of sample code, especially if you're doing .NET work. I'd be happy to share that with you if you care to have it. And any other questions about this, about the services?
Is on the data side of it, I noticed, and maybe this is not a question for you, in the SCS data service, the CIMIS calculation method is not supported. Currently on the CIMIS website, the CIMIS ET is the default ET for the WSN data.
Right.
Is now the default ET the ASCE ET?
That's correct. In fact, what you'll find is the new CIMIS. Now, I realize everyone's using the current CIMIS, but there's a new CIMIS underway. In fact, the CIMIS Web API is the predecessor of what will be a larger move to get CIMIS Phase 2, which is the new CIMIS, into production. And in that new CIMIS Phase 2 deployment, what you're going to find is the default ETO will be the ASCE or PM ETO as we know it. So they are moving away from using the CIMIS ET as the default ETO, and they're moving to the Penman-Monteith or what we know also as ASCE ETO.
Thank you.
No problem.
Nice job, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much. It sounds like there's no more questions, guys. So it sounds like it's a wrap. Again, if you need to reach me, you know where I am. Please register, and we will get information out to you ASAP. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye now.